I'm just going to pop on all the different colors onto my wet palette and we'll start making a basic skin tone. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and I'm going to be talking about the Scale 75 acrylic paints. So last time I talked about the basics of the paint system, and I'm going to be using the same color palette, and we're going to start painting a figure. So I've got the figure here. So this is part of the Hearns workshop figurines. This is the walking girl in 1:24 scale. So she's all grey at the moment, so this has just been cleaned up off the printer material, slightly sanded, and then it's green primer that's being put on, because with brush painting, primers are always recommended because it gives a nice key to the surface. And I've just used this particular one, so that's the Mr. Hobby surfacer. This is a reasonably fine one. This is 1200. But you can use any primer, any of your favourite primers will be fine, as long as it's got a matte finish to it. Okay, so I've just got her pegged up through the leg and just in a base, so it's easy for me to handle, so I don't have to touch the painted surface all the time. And then I've got my wet palette. So wet palette is essential for working with particularly brush painting with acrylics. So we've got another tutorial video on YouTube about how to prepare one of those. So we just take the cover off. Okay, I've got a little bit of blotting paper there, so this is for cleaning up the brushes. Got brushes here, some plain water, and I'm just going to pop on all the different colors onto my wet palette and we'll start making a basic skin tone. So I'm going to add the black and white here as well, because they're going to be used for various tones if I need to. For white particularly, I need that, so I'll add a bit more of that. So I'm going to find a happy medium skin tone first, and then we can deepen it and lighten it as well. Now I'm going to use the blue here as well, because every skin tone does have a touch of blue, and you use the blues for making the shadow wear type tones. And then yellow and red is essential, because they're what we're going to use for the orangey tones. And then I'll use this brown here as well, because that'll save me from mixing all the different primaries together. Alright, and we'll use that as the base for the skin. So I'll add a bit of extra of that too. Alright, so there's a fair bit of that. Okay, pop all those down, get rid of this dust there. Alright, so I'm going to get a flat brush here, wet it a bit. Alright, let's get into it. I've got my little magnifying goggles here, so let's just put that aside, get my brush, and I'll start mixing up the base tones. So moisten the brush. Alright, so the brown is going to be the main. Bit of red. Some yellow for the orange. Alright, so let's just mix it up and see what we get. Okay, so this is where you have a look at it and you think, oh, it's not quite orange enough. So, a bit more red. More yellow. Okay, so you can see how the brown is getting a more of an orange tone. So we can use this as an extreme shadow. What I'll do is take a bit of that, put it here, so we'll make another tone out of that, and then a bit over here, and I'll start changing those slightly until I'm happy with the mid tones. Okay, so this is going to be the base tone, so we've got the dark tone, base tone, and then we'll make that into a lighter tone. So I'll start converting that with a bit of white. Okay, at the moment that's still too brown for my liking. I'll add a bit of yellow. Okay, so that's buffed up quite a bit. Alright, touch more yellow. Okay, I think that's pretty good for a dark flesh tone. Put some here and I'll make a slightly lighter one. This is getting closer to a base type flesh tone. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so let's do my other mix, which I've got here. So let's get this one's got more of a richness to it, slightly more pink. Okay, so this one being a pinker tone can be used for areas where it's a bit richer in blood, so around the cheeks, things like that. Alright, so there you go. So we have basically got 5 different flesh tones already. Okay, so this I'm going to use as my absolute shadow full of flesh, and then I've got my mediums. So between this one and this one, I'll be using as the base for most of it, and then it'll be highlighted with these ones here. So I like to start with the darker colors first. So we'll get with the extreme shadow tone, and I'll paint that in areas which are going to be hard to access. So around the hair and around the hair and the face, and around the intersecting parts of say the clothing with the skin. So say with the shorts. So I'll concentrate around here. So shorts, around the edge of the hands with the sleeves, and around here with the shirt, and then around the hairline. Okay, so this would just be, it doesn't have to be very accurate. You just want to get the paint within the recesses as much as you can. I'm going to thin that a bit more. Okay, the idea behind this is you're not going to be able to get into these little recesses easily at a later stage. So you put in all your shadow to start, and then you build up the tones around them. Now some people like to paint their figures in a black tone, which is the same idea, but to go from black to very bright highlights takes a lot of paint and a lot of time. So by going into a lighter shadow tone like this, it's going to be quicker and also use less material. So I'm just doing this for the eyes as well, around that area, underneath the nose, around the mouth, under the chin. Okay, so we just have a quick look. Okay, so that gives you a quick idea of how I've concentrated around the edges of the face, underneath. So when you're painting, you need to imagine where the light's coming from. So usually the light will be coming from the upper direction, and so anything that's underneath, such as the chin and the neck, is going to be darker. So you concentrate that dark tone there. Alright, okay, so I'll do the rest of the skin. So we'll do the arms and around the legs as well. Okay, so I'm just doing around the edge to the sleeves, inside the fingers, because between the fingers is going to be a shadow tone. I'll do the back of the hand as well, inside of the hand. Alright, same with this side. Alright, so now I'm just going to do the edges up to the shorts. Now this technique is just to get your base work in. After you get all this done, and you've got a reasonable graduation in your tones, you can go into finer details at a later stage. Okay, so do it around the shoes. So she's not wearing any socks here, so I'll just do it around here. Under the knees and behind the knees. Just missed a bit there behind the hand. Okay, so this is with all the darker tones already applied. So around the face, as I explained earlier, I've got around the hands, at the intersection points of the clothes, so at the base, just where the flesh meets the shoes, and then also at the shorts. So from now I'm going to do the mid-tone and cover most of it to be the base. So let's move on to this one here. So let's see, mid-tone, I think we'll choose this one. Just thin it down a bit. So basically I'm thinning it to a point where it's going to be smooth coming off the brush, because if it's too heavy it's going to leave a lot of brush strokes. Now to do this bit I think I'm going to have to wear my goggles here. Okay, so I'm just going to go across the forehead. Now this is going to take quite a number of coats, so you'll find that it's going to be uneven, but then it'll smooth up as you continue on. So I'm going to apply this over all the areas. Now you find that when you're going over the shadow tones, you can still see through it because it's like a glaze. Okay, so that's around the face and the neck. Right, let's do the hands. Now I'm using a broad brush at the moment because I just want to cover the area quickly, and we'll move into some smaller brushes as we progress. Okay, just around the back here. Back of the hands. Right, move on to legs. Okay, so just going up against the edges, just trying to cover every single part. I'm just going over the knees. So you may be able to see here how thin the paint is as I'm going over this shadow section here. You can quite easily see the shadow section still coming through, because we want that to influence the overall finish of the painted finish. Okay, getting closer. Almost finished the first coating of the legs. Okay, just doing the back. Okay, so there you go. That's the first coating of the base flesh over the shadow. You will see that it's pretty patchy in places. We'll just leave that to dry for a bit, and we'll put on another coat, and then we'll start working in some more of the details. Alright, so face is pretty much dry. Alright, so I'm going to work with a smaller brush now. So put that down. Get one of these pointed brushes. Yep, looks good. Alright, start working on the face. So I'm still using the same tone, but it's just going to be more controlled now. So I'm concentrating on where I think the light's going to hit the face first. So across the forehead, top of the nose, top of the cheeks, the top of the chin, okay, and so we'll continue adding paint across the chest. Okay, around the side of the neck, to the top there, side of the cheek. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit more tone to the areas where I think it should be lighter. So again, on the top of the cheeks, across the top of the forehead, extend it down a bit, across the chin, tip of the nose, side of the nostril. Okay, so that's with the second coat of the flesh around the face. So I'm just going to be concentrating around the face now, and we'll get that to a point where it's finished so you get a better idea, and then we'll finish the rest at another stage. Okay, so that's around the face. Now I'm going to continue on with the same tone, and we'll just increase the intensity of this tone until we're happy, and then we'll work onto some highlights. So this is going to be quite a quick method of doing flesh. Hopefully you get an idea of how quickly it is to work with. So again, I'm just going to concentrate on forehead, top of the eyes, top of the nose to the nostrils, top of the cheeks, extending down a touch to the jawline, tip of the chin, okay, around the side of the face, side of the head here, and then highlight the ear a little bit. And then the side of the neck, and then extending down to the chest. Okay, so you can see a little bit of smooth graduations coming through now. So I'm getting onto the highlights now. So with the highlights, let's move on to this pinker tone here. So this I'm going to use around the cheeks. Make that a little bit thinner. So I want that a touch thinner so it acts a little bit more like a glaze. So the thinner it is, the more control you're going to have, but you just may need some extra coats of the paint to get what you want. So I'm going to concentrate around the cheeks. Okay, so as a tip just underneath the eyes, extending down. I'll do the tip of the nose as well, so it's the bridge of the nose down, a little bit on the sides, and then the top of the lip. Too much paint, tip of the lips. Tip of the chin. And then I'll probably add a little bit to the forehead as well. So I'll do a touch of the forehead here. Alright, now touch of this along chest area here. And a little bit on the side of the neck. Okay, so there you go. So we've got 3 tones here. We've got the shadow tone, mid tone, and some highlights. So you'll see that it's starting to get some definition, getting more of a 3-dimensional look coming through. And from here we'll just do some finer details. So we'll do a slightly redder tone for the lips, a little bit more for the cheeks, and then we'll get into doing other things like the eyes and such. Okay, so let's start off with this here, a little bit of red, and we'll get this pink tone happening here. Alright, so we're going to use this as a glaze around the cheeks. Okay, just the tips of the lips. Okay, have a closer look. Okay, so let's quickly with pink on the lips and a little bit of blush on the cheeks. Now lips would probably be better off a little bit more red, so I can do a little bit of more definition there, and then we'll move on to the eyes. Okay, a touch of red, a bit more red here. Okay. This is where these magnifying lenses really help. It's a bit hard to see, but trying to give a bit more definition. Okay, looks alright. So it's a bit more definition on the lips, a bit redder. Okay, let's move on the eyes. So start off with the whites. Now the whites tend not to do pure white because it's too much high contrast, so we always mix it down with touch of flesh to cut it back. Alright, so that's a really light flesh tone for the whites of the eyes. You just got to be really careful. I mean, if you make a mistake here, which is quite easy to do, you can always touch it up with some flesh tone around it, which I'll have to do because getting the eyeballs in the right spots can be quite tricky. Okay, so that's the whites of the eyes incorporated. Alright, so I'm just going to try and find where I'll put the eyeballs. So at this stage, you can make the eyeballs at any position, so whichever direction you want her to be looking. So I guess we'll get them just slightly off center and make it a bit more interesting too. So let's give it some blue eyes. We'll start with a darker blue. Oh, that's probably a bit too dark. Alright, that's more like it. Alright, so when you're doing just little dabs for eyeballs, you don't want that much paint loaded in your brush. So get rid of most of that on our blotting paper. We just pick up a tip. Be like so. Alright, so basically you need to pick one eyeball first and then match it with the other one. So let's put this one there. Oh, a bit more paint. Alright, you got to be really steady with this. Alright, so I'm just adjusting the shape. So it looks alright. So it's going to look a bit rough, but you'll trim it off later. So I just see there we've got one eyeball in place, and then we just try to match the position with the second one. So the second eyeball is always the hardest to do, because if you don't get it right, figure's going to look a bit off center. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so there you go. So you've got two eyeballs in place. Now it's going to look a bit odd because they're perfectly round at the moment. We're going to trim that back with a bit of flesh tone. But before we do that, we're going to give a bit more detail to the eye. So we need the black pupil, and then a little bit of red around the eyes. Okay. So let's get a bit of pure black. Okay, so we need the smallest amount of paint, try to pinpoint it right in the center. Okay, so we've got pupils in place now. And now I'm going to do some red around the eyes. So when you look at people's eyes, there's always a bit of redder colour around the edges. So we'll get this sort of pinker tone here. Get that there. Now richen up with a bit of red. So that looks pretty good. It looks really red there, but we're going to be doing such fine lines that it needs to stand out a little bit. But it'll be such a fine line it won't be overpowering. Alright, so let's just try to give some definition. Okay, I've done one side, just done the other side. Okay, so that's with a little bit of definition. It needs a bit more work because the edges are really fine, so you probably need to do a bit of trial and error before you get it right. Now we're going to try and blend that around, and then we're going to do the eyebrows and a bit of touching up, and it's just about finished. So let's move around here and try to define the eye a little bit better. Alright, okay, so I'm going to do a bit of blending some of these earlier tones I had here. So this is basically softening off the edges that I've put in. Okay, touch more of this. Alright, okay, looking okay. Alright, so I'm going to start putting in the eyebrows now. So eyebrows work better if you use a darker tone, which is really thin, like a glaze. That way you can build up the eyebrows slowly to make sure you got the right shape. Now, let's see. Now again, it's probably going to look a little bit messy, but you can trim it all up at a later stage. Right, so that's where the eyebrows sort of blocked in. So you see they're quite big at the moment, but we'll get definition there soon. Okay. Alright, let's get some all this brown. Okay, now I'm going to do the definition. Okay. So you see there where the eyebrows has been trimmed off a bit. So look a bit more natural. Should have a monobrow before, but that's all been fixed now. And so from here, I just do a little bit more fine tuning. I do the area between the lips because that's a bit rough at the moment. And all in all, just try to finalize all the smaller details. So we'll try and get a bit of definition, a bit of a shadow line between the lips. So just using a bit of dark brown. Under the nose, the nostrils. Okay, I just use some of this initial shadow tone here, and I'll concentrate a little bit on the edges around the hair again, just reinforce those. Going around the shirt around here. Alright, and just a little bit more of this medium tone to soften some of these details. This, and we're almost done. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so that's a really quick rendition of a face. So just very quickly with the skin tones. So this is a basic mix I've used with the basic set of the Scale 75 paints. So I've used the black, the white, the blue, the red, the yellow, and also the brown. And between all of that, I've gotten all these tones that I need. So very quickly, we've done the whole face with shadow, eyes, and all the various details such as the lips and such. So there you go. So I guess I'll be working on the rest of the skin tones as well, so across the arms and the legs, and then we'll get into doing all the clothing and the rest of it. So thanks for watching the first installment of the painting, and I hope you join in to see the rest of it until this is finished to completion. Thanks for watching.